What's up, demons? It's your boy, Tom Badager here next to Anatoly Alexeyev. We went from over there to over here, and now we've got the games right now. So, Outcold Gaming versus Team Queso. I think this is very similar to what we're about to look at. Outcold Gaming, a slew of players that have played in the Pro League and have ascended to that level either now or in the past. And Team Queso, a team very much that has been around the competitive scene but never really kind of reached that level. Now as we look towards Flashpoint versus Simplicity, Flashpoint's a very similar feeling. You've got Dzoni and Sibi and that whole Eastern European squad that has always wrestled around that competitive level but never ascended. And Simplicity across the way, a number of Pro League-esque names.
That's true. maniaKK being there, DeathPanter as well, having a lot of notable names, but also some other names that have the talent pool available. Genetics in the support role, Faeles in the jungle is a highlight player from time to time, depending what day he shows up. And like you mentioned, I like the point that you referenced, how Flashpoint is similar to Queso because they stuck together throughout the season. They've been able to make those plays, and as a result, they're tied with Simplicity in the records, 2-1. But in week number 2, Simplicity getting the better end of that best of 3, winning it 2-1.
Some interesting stuff here. I've always really enjoyed watching Dzoni play. I think that what Dzoni brings is very special. What Flashpoint has been able to do is definitely kind of create this old school Panthera-esque feel.
Yes.
The team that was before Epsilon and Energy, where that team blossomed into being just a Voltron of a unit. But once upon a time, it was adapting in the 4 homies, and that's what we see here out of Simplicity. Dzoni and 4 very talented players. Don't let me take anything away from them. But Dzoni is the man on the spot. Across the way, Simplicity, well, maniaKK's in that solo position.
He loves his aggressive soul laners, trying to sneeze through the wall accidentally instead of getting off the umbrella ring from a distance. His mechanics kind of high up there. DeathPanter, you can never count him out, whether he's playing the Hunters in Season 4 Elevates or now the Mages in Season 6 Minor League. He's still a threat to be reckoned with.
DeathPanter has been sort of the unofficial mascot of the minor league, in my opinion. Always a very vocal player of the community. That I respect that. I think it's important that he's kind of always around. But also, it's kind of hard to keep him quiet mid-game as well. So, a pillar of what we see down here in the minor league.
StreakUp as well, the Hunter player for Simplicity, loves his Xbalanque. I think Kespainify in that same boat. I think that between the Pro League and the minor league, Xbalanque a heavily prioritized pick, and that's what we could see in the picks and bans today.
Well, let's head right to it for game number 1, Simplicity versus Flashpoint. And as we head into the picks and bans, Simplicity will be on the left side, meaning the first pick.
I'm expecting to see Xbalanque being left open.
Yeah.
This doesn't surprise me, however. Kwong, we know what Dzoni's able to do with this pick. It's not a very popular pick amongst every jungler, but Dzoni specifically has been making this god look like it's S tier.
Yeah, it's incredible what Dzoni's been able to kind of bring with the Kwong. So Simplicity want to ban it out, and they'll ban out the Giannis as well. And that means there's a number of power picks. King Arthur likely to be banned out here, and he will be by Flashpoint. But you've got access to the Bacchus. You've got access to Bakasura, who's very celebrated right now. You've got access to the Hera, that's very celebrated. And you've got access to the Naja, who has almost been blanket banned for the entirety of SPL, SCL, SML.
Sure. I agree. I think Naja is a great pick. You can't really go wrong with it. Very flexible as well, but I'm surprised that it wasn't the Xbalanque that's now being locked in for Flashpoint. The global presence of turning out the lights of Darkest of Nights makes it more difficult for the Naja to engage.
Yeah.
So I would almost rather have the Xbalanque.
Not me. I think the Naja certainly has a large impact in that early game specifically, especially if Naja finds his way into that dual lane role. It can be very, very scary for the opposition. Simplicity here going to possibly pair Naja with the Hachiman. We'll keep an eye and see if anybody's going to be playing support. But Poseidon, unlikely to fit that bill. He'll probably be in the mid lane.
Against an Agni and Xbalanque, the cripple is going to go a long way. Normally, whenever you're thinking about going Poseidon, you don't have to lock it in this early in the draft unless you're afraid it's going to get banned against you. And you need some good setup. And this makes sense with the Naja. You got Windfire Wheels, plenty of time to get in position, drop the Kraken when it's most necessary. Kumbhakarna, though, has a great setup of his own, being able to drop that epic uppercut. A similar style to the Naja, just a different way of doing it.
Also, Kumbhakarna does a great job of ruining players' attack speed. And Hachiman, while he's going to be able to turn up the attack speed on Simplicity, Kumbhakarna going to be able to counteract that with the Mighty Yawn anyway.
No. We're not turning up. We're streaking up.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll turn up on the weekend. That's what we'll do. We'll wait till then? Is that it, Tully?
We'll wait till the weekend.
Tully opens the door.
I know what song he's talking about.
Tully opens the door and is never excited about what he sees behind it. Second round of bans coming out here. Flashpoint going to take care of the Kepri and the Circuit there. Simplicity on the other hand. Two junglers. No Kali and no Mercury, which leaves Vamana to be a selection for Flashpoint. Certainly a nice look here.
We saw in the last set what Worst Turtle was able to do with it. Even Warchi in the mid lane was able to do with it. With an Agni locked in, I'm not expecting the same idea where we're going to see that mid Vamana coming
Jungle
out.
Agni?
FaraKrik. It's Johnny. Nah, I don't see him playing Jungle Agni.
Not this time around. Achilles and Ratatoskr are going to be locked in for Simplicity. Nice little combination of players here. I think Achilles finds himself in the solo side. Rat in that jungle, and Naja for the support. Herc on the other side. Simplicity and Flashpoint. They're going to game one, and we're following.
Flashpoint and Simplicity. Game one on the other half of the EU SML underway. It's old Optimus Gang up against some of the SPL and SML All-Stars on Simplicity. maniaKK, Faeles, DeathPanter. Players you all know. Genetics ran this league last year. StreakUp down here too. So I expect a very good set.
And Simplicity, by the way, they're going to have their original jungler, no more substitute, having to come into play here. Although Simplicity didn't look half bad when they had that sub in last week. So
that's right.
We're just looking to have, I think, a repeat set victory here.
Already, though, some aggression by the red buff as Genetics is moving up to the Chaos side. And he did try and contest that buff. He's now rejoining StreakUp. As it looks like both these two hunters have, at least for now, been left alone inside that duo lane. And they've got these supports, instead moving over to the other side of the map and exploring around, trying to see what they can find. There's been a lot going on with these supports about where they can go on the map in the early game, what's the best use of their time, and we're seeing that even here in the SML, as Genetics is already in trouble. Johnny going aggressive on the Vamana, looking for the horrific emblem, trying to take him down, but StreakUp has rejoined, dashed in, and now it's Kespainify who's low. StreakUp finds first blood, and they've got more help as well. Stun comes through, Johnny falls. That's a double for StreakUp to start things off for Simplicity.
I don't think that gank could have gone any more perfectly either for Simplicity. This is the kind of bounce back that you want to see from Faeles. Had to sit out last week, but no longer waiting around, just looking to jump right into the heart of the action early on. And that's also a fairly crippling gank because it's not just one member that ends up dying, but two of them at the exact same time. It's just not only double the rewards, but Faeles, as long as he stays consistent with these Acorn Blasts, he's just getting so much out of them every single time.
And that's the beads coming out from FaraKrik as well, forced out by Faeles yet again as he catches him out in the jungle. So far, this aggressive start from Simplicity has worked out. Though I don't even know if it's fair to categorize it as just Simplicity being aggressive. So is Johnny, lurking around in the jungle, looking for ganks. And he ends up taking a spill. That early 2 for 0 is going to impact all over the map because Johnny and Kespainify are now behind.
Little unfortunate for Faeles that he ended up with 2 assists, but can't be all that pressed about your Hunter getting an early double kill. And Sibi gonna miss the opportunity for a solo onto maniaKK. Might come back to haunt him if maniaKK ends up turning things around.
A little too seasoned is maniaKK to end up falling in that 1v1. We saw another SPL veteran have some spills early on the solo lane earlier today in Demi. So maniaKK not willing to follow that same path, actually level 4. So slightly ahead in terms of experience over this Hercules.
The positive, though, here for Flashpoint is even though Johnny and Kespainify were both picked off early on, it doesn't really seem to have had too much of an impact across the map in general. Seems like both teams are still able to confirm their buffs, no problem. And Flashpoint's Johnny actually leading in the experience charts.
Yeah, it's hard to believe he's actually doing well. Faeles has probably committed a lot of time to these ganks. But speaking of how well the people are being able to farm over time, we'll talk about this in a minute. Johnny now in some trouble. Sibi should be enough peel. Though the Kraken from DeathPanter actually connects, but he has little mana, has been pulled back in. Can Faeles do enough to get him back out? It looks like he can. Sibi just going to keep swinging away. DeathPanter actually stopping to make sure he gets to those mid-harpies, and rightfully so. They do make it away from Sibi.
But no one's level 5 yet for Flashpoint, except for FaraKrik, who just taked in that mid lane. Fusify, though, under duress over here in the dual lane. StreakUp's not wasting any time at all, just looking for this purple buff.
And the body block, yeah, Jutsu for the stun, and now Fusify's in the passive. Dzoni will get here in time to at least try and find some kind of trade, but that is yet another kill. Kespainify, though, finally gets on the board for Flashpoint. 1 for 1 around that purple buff, but Simplicity are doing whatever they want across this map.
And Fusify, the one true support god, man, just holds on to that purple buff, sacrifices his life for the buff, which obviously isn't worth it for Flashpoint here, but at the very least, Flashpoint holding on to their own buff timer at least might discourage Simplicity from looking for future attempts towards that purple.
Well, before all that action, Taco, I was wanting to ask you about genetics and this start that he went on the Najah. We see Najah supports all the time. That's not so uncommon anymore. But is skipping Guardian's Blessing the call? Talaria boots are good, don't get me wrong, but I feel like that extra gold gain's huge.
Okay, but he has the health chalice, so I think one positive about this start from genetics is that when you go for the boots rush, Talaria might not be the most damage in the world, but as Najah, you're already stripping a lot of protections off of that ring bounce.
Yeah.
Your damage output is pretty safe in the early game, at least to continuously apply pressure. But right now, genetics, you just got to be careful to not get caught out. Fusify with a nice mez with the root. FaraKrik, though, still wiggling around and alive.
And actually going to find the turnaround onto this Agni that started with an attempt to try and take down genetics on this Najah. Fusify stuns him out, so there will be no root, and Faeles finds a double. This early game from the Ratatoskr has been great so far. Simplicity running the table on Flashpoint.
It's just going from bad to worse right now for Flashpoint Finch. Every single time it looks like they're about to have a promising pick opportunity or even a gank, it's just completely 180 before they even have a chance to respond with their own reinforcements. And I actually like that trade-off between FaraKrik and Fusify. I thought for sure that we were about to see the end of genetics, and then the next thing you know, Faeles is coming through with a really solid through the Cosmos. It just seems like this semi-global mobility for the Rat has helped so much for getting him around and into areas for Dzoni.
And DeathPanter's been right there to follow up as genetics can't quite find the Windfire wheels to lock down FaraKrik. He might pay for it now with his life, as Fusify does have the lockdown. Horrific Emblem comes out to buy him some time. He's barely escaped, but he should get stomped on by Dzoni. That puts number 2 on the scorecard for Flashpoint to try and get things closer to parity. I wonder if maybe a little extra health might have helped out there.
Might have been nice, but I think that's also part of the risk you take as a Najah. When you go in for the ultimate, you just swing and a miss.
That's a good point.
Genetics, I think, getting rightfully punished. Got out the last time from FaraKrik and Fusify, but no round 2 escapes.
Can only cheat death a couple times, it looks like, and he finally ends up paying the price. I was saying that he might end up missing out on some of that gold gain, but maybe you don't miss it so much if you're able to get 5 assist credits in the first 6 minutes of the game, so genetics might still be A-okay despite that. In fact, because of how far behind Fusify's been, I don't think he's going to hurt that much at all.
Some of this also draws back, though, to that original topic you asked me on genetics going for the Talaria boots rush over a Guardian's Blessing. With the Guardian's Blessing, those extra little bit of prots might have been enough to get him out of there or create a little bit of distance, but then you also have to wonder, well, without the boots, how long does he really survive to begin with? So there's trade-offs, I think, on both sides of the spectrum, but for right now, Simplicity are at least accomplishing what I think this draft was entirely suited for, and that's all early game pressure.
And they absolutely have it so far throughout this game. And even take a look at the Hunters. There's a good bit of differentiation between StreakUp and Kespainify in terms of gold, more importantly, even than experience. So we might see that in terms of these back timers of him getting those Devourer's Gauntlets on before Kespainify has the Transcendence, getting some stacking going right away, and having some lifesteal in these trades that Kespainify won't be able to match. That might make things even easier for an already safe Hunter in Hachiman for StreakUp.
This is a really big pickup buy, though, for Faeles, finishing off that Crusher. If
Oh,
we
you're
thought
right.
that Acorn Blast was putting in some numbers beforehand, now just wait until that Crusher begins to really swing. And looking at the gold charts, too, you can see that Faeles is only about 500 or 400-ish over Dzoni. It's just that the ability, I think, to build that Acorn early on and going for the Acorn Rush just helped Faeles a little bit faster with that mobility aspect we were just discussing for part of the reason why Simplicity has had so much early game success.
It absolutely has, and We know how strong Crusher is as a power spike for these junglers. I mean, even I was able to do some office bullying with it, so we certainly know it's an item that can facilitate these guys and provide them with a great opportunity. And Faeles has looked really good, hasn't he? He's one of those players, Taco, that I feel like we always hear so much about from the other pros, that they know this guy is great, that they know he has that capability, and we don't always get to see it when he's in these matches because maybe things just don't go right with the team. Now Faeles has this opportunity on a very strong roster in the SML to show exactly how strong he is.
Trying to see if all that time in the SPL was worth it in the end. I mean, bringing things back down to the SML as well, I think is also a different change of pace that can honestly be really good for somebody like Faeles, who I think at a pro level, he struggled with consistency more than anything else. But with DeathPanter, he seems to have found a different level of synergy that was never really there for him when he was on SK with Lobster, and so seeing the way that Faeles now chooses to let DeathPanter hold that thought though, because DeathPanter is right up in the air.
Fusify and FaraKrik planned this gank, but they're not going to lock down DeathPanter. They're going to try and settle for genetics instead, but some hot moves get him out of there. And now it's Sibi, who's in execute threshold. maniaKK finds that kill with a little bit of help from Faeles on the Rat. They take down the Hercules, and then Dzoni falls as well. DeathPanter and genetics have found one more.
Dzoni didn't even get a chance to use that ultimate. Kraken
right.
just gobbling him right up. FaraKrik with a nice little attempt to go for the left mid Harpy steal, but unfortunately for him, he's just going to have to miss out on even more experience. And little by little, Simplicity just keep chipping away at Flashpoint's jungle. And not only that, but all of these consistent picks are also giving Simplicity so much map pressure in general. Faeles able to take super aggressive routes that I don't think would be available normally. I mean, Dzoni, he's having troubles just getting through these mid lane choke points. So I can't even begin to imagine what it must be like for him around the heart of like a Gold Fury or even the Oracle contention points. These have all just been so heavily in Simplicity's favor.
It also was great spacing from them to respond to that gank attempt, right, from FaraKrik and Fusify in the middle lane. They were waiting around that corner for DeathPanter to step a little bit too far forward so they could blink in and start that fight off and have Dzoni follow up. But DeathPanter and genetics stayed far enough away. They weren't both controlled, that they were able to kind of wiggle around and reposition back to tower. DeathPanter was quick with his beads. That was enough to get them out of that gank, which was also key to turning that fight around.
And while I understand the blink on the Kumbhakarna, I think that it was a nice idea that just didn't really translate from paper to game from Fusify here. And the problem now is that you're stuck with this Kumbhakarna, who's already about 1.5 levels to 2 levels behind the Ninja, but he has no way to avoid any sort of hard CC, which Simplicity has plenty of between Sash and Kraken Whirlpool alone.
Yeah.
And then you also have to factor in that there isn't really any team fighting relics so far for Flashpoint in comparison to Simplicity. These horrifics that Genetics has been dropping, he's been so patient as well, I think, to wait from Flashpoint's members to fully respond. Once he has 3 to 4 people in the area, then we see that horrific getting pressured at, or pressed, other than Genetics simply just trying to, I think, find actives, because there's, I think, 2 different ways you can go about this if you're Genetics, and that's looking to be over-aggressive and trying to force the relics early on, like the beads, but the way he's been playing so far, it's tough to complain.
I kind of like these blinks, Taco, because they have like 40% cooldown built on FaraKrik already, and that does give them some nice control, and they can initiate a lot with him in junction with those blinks. The problem is that Simplicity have just played too well around that. Genetics was so quick on that turnaround Windfire wheels just now, and that's how it's been for 12.5 minutes, is that every time Flashpoint have looked for initiation, Simplicity have been perfect and ready on their responses.
I think the sound cues as well have just been devastating for Flashpoint, because Genetics, while he's not necessarily someone who's been in Pro League play, he's definitely hung around the European minor league scene long enough to know how to appropriately respond and to have the reflexes to respond.
Exactly, he's got that sixth sense if you saw it on display just now. That's the Sash, allows him to reposition, but epic uppercut means he'll be locked down for longer. He's now rooted in place as well, and very low. Kespainify will find that kill, but I think the Rat wants to answer back. A nice Kraken comes through to bring Kespainify low as well. The passive's there from Fusify, and Faeles finally finds his way through. Actually, he doesn't. They take Kespainify instead. Fusify's now back up.
Faeles got to be careful here. Sibi's joined the fray.
Huge
over
boulder.
The wall. FaraKrik with the Agni bomb, but he's going to end up paying for it with his life. maniaKK finally getting that rotation over, but now he's got to save the life of his mid laner.
2 for 2 so far, but DeathPanter makes his way back underneath the tier 1 tower. Dzoni also dashes his way out. And finally, our solo laners have joined the fray, Taco, and they both made their impact heard. Sibi with a great boulder inside that mid-harpy little pocket, and it was able to bounce around and get in good damage, as well as maniaKK finding the hunt down in the middle lane for a pick of his own. This game felt all simplicity for a while, but Flashpoint have not faded yet.
Flashpoint made sure to respond, and I think the signs of life were very evident in that last engagement, because Sibi beating maniaKK to the fight, I think ultimately saved or salvaged that situation for Flashpoint, because initially it looked like Simplicity were just going to profit. I mean, sure, they didn't kill Fusify in the end.
Someone should have got Fusify. That seems like an oversight.
But I think that DeathPanter made the right decision choosing to not commit onto Fusify for that last in-hand, because then he would have never been in position to have StreakUp come and assist him when Dzoni was steadily diving him on that backline. Dzoni knew that Faeles was pushed up a little bit too far inside of that left mid hard point to make it in time to save DeathPanter. So I think that was a really smart backup play from StreakUp. I think that also DeathPanter having to toggle his focus, while unfortunate, ultimately saved his life.
The call that kept him alive, it's part of what makes the Kumbha passive so strong. They have Kraken to confirm this objective if they stay on it, and they will. Simplicity grab the first gold Fury of the game, but now can they disengage? They go for red buff, but Fusify was right here. Blink over the wall, Mez, and now Dzoni can join in. DeathPanter's beads have already been forced, but a good Heavenly Banner and rotation from Simplicity might put a stop to this, though. I don't think Sibi's deterred. Forces out Faeles, and Flashpoint have to retreat.
I see 5 members from Flashpoint, but I don't see any deaths for Simplicity. Dzoni, though, still looking to push even further, and this T1 tower might very well go down unless maniaKK has something to say about it.
He doesn't have that much mana, though. I don't know how much he can do. Big bombs coming out from FaraKrik slows down Simplicity's push, and that's a tier 1 tower secured for the Chaos team. What about Fusify? Good dash, and that means there was no execute. They were on the same page. It's just that Faeles couldn't land the knock-up. Now they're going to look for genetics instead, and FaraKrik punished him the second he comes back down.
No Kraken, so Flashpoint still knowing to push
maniaKK
on the gas
too.
pedal. StreakUp just narrowly avoiding that knockup from Sibi, but Dzoni chilling in that big baby form, perfectly content to just keep the members of Simplicity at bay underneath this T2 tower. Now with those 2 picks, the rest of Flashpoint can start looking to not only buff invade onto Faeles for his speed, but that Pyromancer, it's going to go down any second, and Sibi, he's still, well, he's not alive any longer, but he did what he needed to do for the better of his team.
He kept the attention away from that Pyromancer, so Flashpoint could secure it. And remember, that was all because Simplicity committed onto that Gold Fury. They took some poke from the bird itself, from some damage coming from Flashpoint while they were on it, and yeah, they secured the objective, but maybe they shouldn't have stuck around on that red buff afterwards, because Flashpoint stepped on the gas hard. They pushed and pushed onto the tier 1 and on all the objectives afterward.
Well, the blink over the wall from Fusify was a little bit intense, I think, from Flashpoint. I'm not sure that Simplicity were all that prepared. They still ended up confirming their own red buff, however, and I thought that would have been the end of it, but Simplicity choosing to try and reset underneath their T2 tower and then looking to push past that T2 tower line, I think is where things kind of went south for them. Flashpoint just had all 5 members already grouped up, that by the time maniaKK came in for the flank, he was the one that was just a little bit too deep in the backline there for Simplicity to actually follow up on, and Flashpoint just took full advantage of the Achilles being over the line.
I love that Flashpoint were ruthlessly aggressive there, though, because they built that way with these relics in particular. If you got double blink and no team-fighting relics, I think you got to be a little degenerate and blink over the wall there and just keep pushing forward.
Especially when you just saw a Poseidon, probably, arguably, the biggest team-fighting ultimate that Simplicity had to offer here.
Yeah.
And the Kraken was used to confirm the Gold Fury. I mean, shout out to Simplicity, yeah, you got gold, but everything else that came after the fact, that's the kind of punishment that I think Flashpoint has to find.
And that was the right call from Flashpoint. I've been eyeing Sibi's build so far. He doesn't really have any dedicated protections. He's working on the Armored Cloak now, which is nice. That should give him some nice all protections, but I like that we see StreakUp going into this attack speed build, and I imagine this is Kensai's next. That can punish these HP-heavy builds. The only problem he might have is that Dzoni has built this higher than a Nemean Lion, which will reflect some of that damage back. But so far, I think StreakUp might be in a good spot to slow down Sibi as long as they get some anti-heal.
I think a lot of this game is going to depend on how well can DeathPanter play. And genetics right now, he might have gotten the war, but he's got to be careful getting sent up to the air from that epic uppercut. Ring bounce is good, but only applies to Fusify, and Genetics will live to see another day, but he's half health down, and just fortunately for him, there's no real objectives on the map for Flashpoint to really try and push forward for.
I wonder if Flashpoint didn't have enough information there, Taco, because I think they could have committed a little bit harder. I'm not saying they had to all-in dive, but they definitely could have looked for some more poke through FaraKrik on that, and maybe they just didn't realize that Genetics was kind of that alone. StreakUp was there, but it wasn't a ton of follow-up.
I think it was the Whirlpool that kind of just pushed everybody from Flashpoint, because when you don't have vision and you see a Whirlpool, you just kind of have to assume, well, if the Poseidon's here, that probably means that there's at least one other person here, and you don't want to really clash head-to-head with the 3v3 situation just yet. I think it still might have been a little bit too forward for Flashpoint, and probably just better to play it safe than sorry there. I mean, they just got away with so much in that last fight after the Gold Fury was taken by Simplicity.
That's a good point. You know, I don't think you're ever... It's much harder to lose being too safe than too aggressive, I think. So you can eventually get there, but that wasn't it from Flashpoint. They got some good poke Genetics and backed up with what they had. As I'm continuing to focus on these builds, still not anything by way of anti-heal over here for Simplicity. And that's something they're going to have to rectify soon if they do want to have any hope of killing Sibi, who's kind of doubled down with this shield of regrowth. He's truly playing around this mitigate wounds. Maybe they're just saying, we're not killing Sibi.
I kind of wish that DeathPanter would have been looking for the Divine Ruin here in this 4th item slot as opposed to the gem
I agree.
Of Isolation. But I can't be too upset. It's evident, I think, when you see a Poseidon building for a gem, that DeathPanter is trying to go for a little bit more of that utility playstyle, and maybe just gonna leave things up to maniaKK for that cleanup. One big thing that I think Simplicity has in their favor is, in case anybody does get low from Flashpoint, they'll always have maniaKK on that fatal strike to just clean things up, and I think that's also going to force Flashpoint into having positioned their backline a little bit differently to keep that Achilles at bay.
I agree, the Achilles executes big, but I mean, it's not even just Sibi, right? Johnny's going to be doing a ton of healing as well. It just seems like it would be worth having a little bit more than this built sooner for this Simplicity team to try and slow them down. They are in the lead, you know, they are on front, and so far they've been able to dictate the pace of the game in a lot of ways. So if you're the ones pitching the ball, then maybe you can afford to not worry about the other team's healing so much, but it might come back to bite them if this game goes much longer.
Something I will say though, Finch, 3 blinks, usually better than 2.
3 is a lot, isn't it, for Simplicity? Oh, the boulder comes out a little bit too early. Wouldn't have mattered. DeathPanter had the Aegis anyway, drops the Kraken at his feet, but now completely isolated. But a huge knockup from Faeles. It's just not enough. Kespainify falls, or rather grabs the kill. StreakUp gets one as well into Sibi. Kespainify finds the double, but eventually ends up falling to the Hachiman to find a double of his own. But FaraKrik raining away with the bombs over the top. Finally ends up bringing it home, but maniaKK takes down Dzoni. It's just not enough from this Agni, as it ends up being 3 for 3.
And then there was 1. I mean, there's only 1 now. I did not think that Fusify was actually going to fall that easily, but maniaKK still holding on to that fatal strike, now trying to see if he can apply some pressure onto FaraKrik there in mid, but a quick dash away on the Agni is going to keep him safe in the mid lane. That's one of those situations where I think that Simplicity might actually end up winning here if they're able to get this Gold Fury, but it is a risky situation here because you're kind of depending on StreakUp for confirmation, and I'm just not sure that a Hachiman's really going to have that over the Agni.
FaraKrik, I don't think he has enough information. He's trying to come around to the backside to zone them off because the blink, the teleport rather, coming in from Sibi. This is great. Now StreakUp very low, and this Hercules keep right on going. Shield of Regrowth means he gets some more speed, but a great sash from Genetics shuts everything down. No more push forward from Flashpoint, but they did their job. No Gold Fury secured by Simplicity. Means now the Flashpoint gets considered for themselves, but they drop it as well. This game has been back and forth.
That teleport was perfect, by the way. I'm actually amazed that StreakUp is still alive right now. He's probably clenching pretty hard there for a second, but hey, at the end of the day, as long as you're alive, that's all that really matters.
But who was it that provided all the AoE damage, if we could go back into that fight? Because Faeles found a great knockup. Knocked up like 4 people with the Rat ult, but DeathPanter's ult was a little bit off the mark. He had to use it early.
It was, I think,
yeah, not bad aim or anything, but you're right. He was forced into it as Oni Fury now being looked at and already confirmed Simplicity again used the Kraken to make sure they get the objective. But what about the fight, Taco.
And this is the hard reset that Simplicity needs to just look for right now, but Sibi actually going to get incredibly low here, taken up into the air. When Fire Wheel's not meant to deal damage, meant to just set him up.
He gets deleted. I don't know if he has enough protections. It's all HP. DeathPanter takes down Fusify as well. Now it's Dzoni left battling with 4. Wants to find the execute as FaraKrik, but it's not there. StreakUp finds yet another double divine now for the Hachiman, but Kespainify, not to be outdone, takes down maniaKK on the other side. 3 for 1, and Simplicity keep pushing.
But look at where Flashpoint's carries were at. They were past their own red buff, and Simplicity just tore apart the front line for Flashpoint. And now they're free to just push into mid lane as hard as they please. They've still got about 12 more seconds until Fusify's up and running, and now with that T2 tower confirmed, that's not only going to open up a lot of the map pressure, but Pyromancer has recently respawned. Why not take that objective for free as well?
They are going to head right on over to it, and this should be right before the Enhanced Fire Giant spawns in, so they won't have too hard a time confirming it, as only Kespainify is on his way. It's down well below half HP, and this had to be a very fortunate steal from Kespainify if he can find his way in. Beads are expended just to try and stop Faeles from getting the kill, but that's Simplicity's Fire Giant free and clear.
I think the only chance Kespainify might have had there is if his ultimate had been up. Maybe the extended auto range would have been enough to sneak by everybody and look for that final in-hand to confirm it. But even then, tough trying to out-secure a Poseidon on an objective. But Simplicity, it was just like clockwork. They went from Cold Fury to mid lane T1 and T2, straight down to the Fire Giant, no hesitation. I was pretty certain that they were just going to look for the Pyromancer, maybe feeling like it would have been too much at once to look for Fire Giant, but since it wasn't an Enhanced Fire Giant, I guess good damage check from Simplicity. They know they can take that bad boy down, no problem.
That's exactly right. Just before that would have spawned in. But Taco, I'm kind of obsessed with Sibi on this Hercules and this thread throughout these fights. I just don't think he's tanky enough. He does have the Height of the Urchin with 3 stacks, but up until now, there was nothing by way of protection. It was all HP. He has a ton of it, but I mean, DeathPanter and StreakUp have been chewing through this Hercules. He hasn't even gotten to mitigate wounds in these fights so far. They're finally building into some dedicated physical procs to stop StreakUp, but he's had a game for himself. 9-0-3 on this Hachiman. They have not had an answer so far.
Oh, what's even crazier still is the fact that there's no anti-heal on Simplicity.
And they're killing him anyway. It's insane.
Raw power, raw damage that Flashpoint are unable to handle. And again, it really does default back to the whole conversation of should Sibi have prioritized protections a little bit more so than this heavy health-based build? Because I think that Shield of Regrowth is an item that's better reserved when you're actually harassing the back line, like forcefully, and
right.
I think we've only seen maybe 1 or 2 instances where that's actually been the case, and I think ever since that red buff from Fusify, we have not seen a successful push in from Flashpoint into Simplicity.
Right. Yeah, that was the last time that I think we saw them as the aggressors going well for Flashpoint. As I like the idea from the Sash from Genetics, just a little bit too early. They gave StreakUp 2 kills at the start of the game, that double kill, and my man has not looked back since. He has been all forward, all W, and has been working for this Hachiman so far. In fact, they're looking to sneak around and maybe catch out Flashpoint.
Danger for Flashpoint here. Dzoni might be the first one to get caught out. Great stun, and the Kraken is huge. The Aegis is even better. Won't keep you alive forever, though, as StreakUp brings down Kespainify.
That was great synergy from Simplicity, and they're not done yet. FaraKrik being hounded in a double kill from StreakUp. He's not slowing down anytime soon. An Immortal comes out. They're going to do the battle with Dzoni, who can't do enough. It's a triple kill. What a performance from StreakUp so far, as he's taken down Flashpoint almost single-handedly. And now they've even found a way to get Fusify. Give it on over to my man. Godlike performance.
And this is disgusting now, watching StreakUp at work. And of course, it's only happening because of this front line from Simplicity, but I think Flashpoint are about to experience their first tumble of the set, Finch.
I think so too. What a clean, dominant performance from Simplicity. Sibi up in the air, doesn't even get to try and defend the Titan. 22 minutes, that's all it takes. Simplicity take the game.
And that was just a nasty start to finish there. And I feel like the turn-up really started to take place around that 16-minute mark for Simplicity. They just found their stride, and it felt impossible to catch up to them from the other perspective there. And I just think that one thing's for sure, maniaKK definitely stepped it up as well, and I just, I don't know, that was just some impressive Smite right there.
It really was impressive, I would say, from both teams. Great job playing around genetics on that Naja. StreakUp was unstoppable that game. I mean, I don't know what more you could ask for, and that's only game one. We've got a whole set coming your way. Let's get it back over to the desk to see what they saw.
Well, I saw dominance coming out from the guys on Simplicity. Fantastic stuff, specifically at a StreakUp. I mean, how do you not mention that performance?
I told you we were going to streak up when going into this.
You did. You did. You did say we're going streaking.
Okay, your words, not mine. 13-0-3, a godlike performance out of this Hachiman, and this is the kind of performance that you would like to see out of your Hunter. The safety net from the Hachiman was enabled from the early game shenanigans. This Ratatoskr gank at level 1 was so easy in the dual lane. They killed out the Xbalanque, like Fusify, Kespainify, couldn't really do much after dying that early in the game.
Yeah, it was a little bit rough there on the dual lane side of things, but Simplicity just continue to push forward. And again, a lot of that I think has to do with the Naja. Genetics is a strong player, and this Naja choice is so very strong. Naja catapults Hachiman into a position to be able to do things like this.
He died a bunch of times, genetics on the Naja, but he kept putting himself in those positions. Sibi deciding to be aggressive and looking for some sort of play at the enemy's speed buff. A little ill-advised, and it's not as if the game was out of proportion at any point. It started to become after this Gold Fury fight where, for whatever reason, Sibi too far away from the rest of his teammates. You see the frontliners trying to do their job, but the backline at a flashpoint was just too far behind to follow up.
Yeah, that's the key. You had this Naja and the solo laner just up in the front, and then you had StreakUp with the horses in the back, and they're just able to do whatever he wants, get out of trouble, cause trouble, and right there, the triple kill, Dzoni in trouble. And that winds up being why Simplicity take the game.
And the utility build from DeathPanter going for the Shaman's Ring and the Gem of Isolation. He has the mobility and the slow factor to slow multiple members down. And that really shut down the dive potential from Dzoni.
Shaman's Ring, flat out an item I want to see more of, specifically when it comes down to characters that have either channeled abilities or dots like the Whirlpool coming out from DeathPanter. You're almost always going to pre-fire before the Kraken. Very rarely do you just let it rip with a raw Kraken. So when it comes down to characters like that, first of all, it has 100 power on it anyway. That's fine. That's what you're looking for out of these power items. And then just 10% extra damage. Yeah, man, I'll take it. I need to see more of this item. DeathPanter, not a surprise to see him being smart this time around.
I think it was because how far ahead they were in the early game to give him that extra damage. Because you need to build those stacks, right? So
the stacks come in like 1 or 2 abilities.
They do, but he built it relatively early. Normally you want to build this like 5th or 6th item. I believe he built it like 4th. So he wanted it more for the movement speed, knowing that eventually he would get it anyway, and that his frontline was doing a good job being the buffer that he needed. There was no point where DeathPanter really felt threatened, I feel, that game.